you're both talking about panic and the reaction that Luxon gave of panicked when he got questioned around Māori protesting or striking or bunking off or whatever you want to call it, making a statement that they're going to support the march rather than their workplace on that day. I think you see it again in Nicola Willis in this piece. I think you see that panic that you got, and I didn't think about this beforehand, but as you're saying it, I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what happens with Nicola Willis in this report when she gets asked about, money set aside for Māori issues, and she's like, and I think it's the same kind of reaction. Do you want to say something first, Bomber, or should we play?
No, please play.
All right, here we go.
Spitting out 2,000 pages an hour, this printer packs quite the punch. A no-nonsense machine for the government's budget.
This one isn't about the photos or the slogan on the front. It's about the substance inside.
Beneath the plain Jane cover, some bold and brutal calls. Ministers.
Can I ask, speaking of tone police, Chewy, the happy, smiley, woohoo, when we're going to face a pretty hard cutting, maybe not austerity, but austerity adjacent. Is this, can I tone police them going, maybe you shouldn't be quite so happy, clappy about all the bad news people are going to get tomorrow?
I'd also point out the plain white cover.
Yeah, I think that's the point she was making, is they're flashy looking. This is not flashy looking because it's not flashy inside.
Just means that they've got no artists, no graphic designers. they can't agree on what stock image to purchase.
Yeah, or play. Maybe they'll get back to Eminem from the last time they did that. All right, we'll keep going.
Is having singled out 240 previous initiatives, either reduced or cut completely.
And they have all found areas to reprioritise so that we can put money where it really counts on the front line.
Protesting outside Parliament today, the disability community.
And they can expect to see in tomorrow's budget a significant funding uplift for disability services.
With Māori urged to take strike action tomorrow to protest the government.
Gotta rise up, baby, it's a revolution.
This former senior public servant recalls how in 2004 she was told not to attend the foreshore and seabed hikoi.
Some of us made the, I think, courageous and solid decision to support the hikoi and attend, despite the fact that our jobs may have been on the line.
She drew a line in the sand then and will do it again tomorrow.
Will there be targeted funding for Māori in your budget?
I don't agree with that approach of separating funding into groups of Māori versus non-Māori.
Well, I think
so. There was the moment.
And we'll do it again tomorrow.
Will there be targeted funding for Māori in your budget?
I don't agree with that approach of separating funding into groups of Māori versus non-Māori.
What do you think, gents? Is there panic there? Just the shuffling and the or am I being a bit harsh?
Hey, look, we've got two people in the water, Pat. One of them's a strong swimmer. The other one's struggling a little bit. I believe in not supplying a life jacket to either of them. Yeah, but that was a question she was not ready to field, and she fumbled it. And the way that she fumbled it told us everything that we need to know. No, there isn't.
That's great. That's such a great analysis of what we just saw there. It hadn't even appeared to her, and hadn't occurred to her. And when she's suddenly put on the spot, she falls back to her philosophical position, which is, we don't believe in treating people. Well, that's just empty nonsense, isn't it? I mean, of course we fund appropriately for these situations and for these issues, but she was just completely unprepared for that question, and I think that really gives you some insight into how steep the cuts are going to be tomorrow, and why Māori are so absolutely incredibly angry with this government.
And then when you, as you mentioned earlier, Bomber, when you put into these results or these numbers that came out today, that 19.6%, 1 in 5 of people living in New Zealand right now are Māori, 12.5% higher than in 2018. I think that's because Māori didn't want to participate in 2018. Māori also make up a larger proportion of the country's younger population, with nearly 1 in 3 people under 25 years old identifying as Māori. So the other thing is, this is not a fringe group. I think that a political party can, subjugate, push to the side and say, well, we've got enough numbers no matter what. In the next 2, 3, put it this way, in 20 years from now, how many Māori will there be under 50? Because those under 25s will then be under 45. So you got a third from 25 to 45, and then what? Half from under 25? The numbers are going to keep on going up. And what you might see is change by attrition in this country like we've never seen before. And what's happening now, I don't know if you saw it, Bomber, but we watched the Foreshore and Seabed documentary on TVNZ On Demand the other week. We had the director on talking about it. I watched that documentary and I went, how the fuck can anyone who is Māori ever vote for this Labour Party again? Like, how can they do it? I wonder if what we're seeing now will be a generational shift for Māori in particular. They go, this is what we need to watch out for in the future. This is as bad as it can get. This is a government, be it through their coalition partners or not, that want to erase the past 50 years of progress. They want it to go away. This is as bad as it can get. And that might just actually rejuvenate and sort of put a fire under Māori to go, get political, get involved. And if they're going to get involved, the right might be up for a pretty short, sharp shock within a few election cycles.
We talked around the Seabed and Foreshore thing about that new generation of young Māori that are coming through, that are politically active, that have grown up seeing these reports come out saying you've got a shorter lifespan, you've been disadvantaged at school, all of this sort of stuff, and they're awake to this stuff, and they're coming up in a cohort of young people that don't necessarily see that division in the same way, that are going to stand with them and push back against this dusty old politics. It's not going to be everyone, but it's going to be a greater proportion of it. And I think this is why when there's discussions about lowering the voting age, that there's such a strong pushback from the right.
Yeah.
They know that's not their voting base.
Yeah.
And that's terrifying to them. And I want these guys to look at the footage tomorrow and see who's marching and see what generation is shepherding the next generation through, and look at those faces, because there's some strong leadership coming through there. And I think when we look at that Seabed and Foreshore protest and we contrast that with what we saw on Waitangi Day and what we hopefully will see tomorrow, there is a generational shift there.
Well, let's remind people before you jump in, Bomber, that when we spoke to the director of the documentary and I asked him, because it was fairly clear that Dame Whina Cooper was the figurehead when it came to 1975 land marches, right? There was one, it was her. And then when you look at 2004, there was several. There was Annette Sykes, there was Hone, there was several. And I said to the director, who are going to be this generation's, because they all stood on Dame Whina Cooper, but who's going to be standing on those 4 or 5? And he said pretty clearly the cool thing about it was in 75 there was one. Now there's sort of a generation of people coming through from Foreshore and Seabed. And Chewy talks about the leadership. It'll be the leadership. So if it's going to go up by 400% from 75 to 04, goes up by 400% again. You'll have 20, 30, 40, 50 of these leaders, gathering the troops and moving forward. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, I think that you have a generation of Māori who see their identity as a strength and who are proud of their identity, just as you also have a generation of European New Zealanders who are very comfortable in being, in terms of being Pākehā, and who are quite comfortable calling themselves Pākehā. I think that there is a younger Gen X down generation who are much more comfortable with a bicultural New Zealand and don't see it as a threat, and actually see the interweaving and the working together of both cultures as a unique strength for New Zealand Aotearoa, and aren't frightened of it. If you look at a lot of the resentment from the right, it's a petty sort of, garden variety bigotry and racism added alongside very large corporate interests who want Māori out of the way so that they're able to exploit natural resources without having to negotiate with Māori. I mean, you look at these fast-track powers, and what we're really seeing here is an attempt to bypass the requirements and the necessity to talk to Māori, because Māori are not actually open to having a lot of their land turned into mines. They're not into that at all. And so by de-establishing legislation, by putting the mandates aside, saying the state has to work alongside Māori, by removing that, this is for corporate interests. And so you've got very large money mixed with a real, petty bigotry. And that's what's generating a lot of this resentment. But the new generation and the next generations coming through don't have that fear about their cultural identity and see it as quite natural and rejoice in the biculturalism, see it as a real strength. And the future is on our side. These people are dying off. There are more settler boomer who are on the way out than coming back through. So the future is ours. This is a last gasp of a movement that suddenly realised the demographics are against it, and they're doing everything they can to mutilate whatever obligations the state has to the treaty.
Yeah, I kind of smile when you say this is the last gasp. You think about it as in a battle situation. You give it your last hurrah. You go hard nuts. You give it one more crack and you throw everything at it. Put that analogy to this government right now. It feels pretty accurate. This has got maybe 45 seconds to go. We want to hear from Marama as well, so we'll get to the end of this article.
On Māori?
Well, I think they've made it clear that they are the most anti-Māori, anti-tiriti government that I've seen in my lifetime.
Cantabrians giving their wish list today.
Where do I start? Mental health was the biggest thing I think of.
Not like it's going to be a Christmas present.
Well, I'm hoping they help their fishermen out.
I don't think we need tax cuts.
I don't think there's enough done for healthcare.
Expect significant coin for coalition partners in the new government's first budget.
Well, it'll be a whole lot better than the last three.
Meanwhile, the coalition cuts.
This is a haircut to ensure that I don't look like a man who hasn't grown up from his teenage years.
Are all the buzz.
Yeah, I'm going to try
16 inches off the top.
Before tomorrow.
Expect more talk of them tomorrow too when the budget's tax cuts are revealed.